Black is back.
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 Black is
Black is
back.
back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back. And the rallying call is Black is back. And all of those people who wanted to be mobilized and do work.
I want to thank you for this conference. On behalf of those of us who escaped from the South up north during the migration after World War II, it's so good to see the people who stayed and kept their minds and souls together to come back and fight the system again. And I welcome all my comrades from the South here. It's a pleasure to be reunited with you again. And I thank you for your struggle on our behalf. In addition to that, I'm afraid of the chairman, so I'm going to try and stick to what they told me to do, which is the point 13, the right to free education from the cradle to the grave. That's the way I would phrase it. But what I'd like to do is to just give you an idea of what you've had so far. And I want to give you the transition from what Sister Nellie was saying very effectively. She talked about the fact that gentrification is a plan. It is just as much a plan as the movement of the nations that were here before the Europeans came. There is a map of this continent. I will not call it America. The entire continent was filled with people. They try to make you think the land was almost empty. But from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, this country was carved out in territories that you now call Indian tribes. They were nations, and the whole country was taken by them. When you look at the map today, most of those nations are not just moved onto reservations. They have been subjected to the most vicious form of genocide. They lost their continent. If you look at that and you listen to what the chairman told us before, you will know this is the agenda for the continent known as Africa. We are losing our continent. And when you look at nature, when you lose your territory, when you lose your landmass, you are going to lose out on history. You will be history because you will be extinct. And I want you to recognize that in Schindler's List, when this Nazi came to Poland, one of the things he said is that the Jews in Poland have 600 years of history, and as of today, that history is a myth. And we are becoming a myth because we do not fight for land, we do not fight for territory, and as my mentor, Queen Mother Moore said, the fight is to control all of the institutions where you exist. You have to prioritize. If you are going to defeat the most powerful weapon in the hands of your oppressor, it stands to reason you don't let the cats educate the mice. They don't educate them, they eat them. So why don't you want to recognize the importance of community control of education and protection of political prisoners as a twofold recipe for freedom? Because every time in this country we stood up in slavery, into Tulsa, you name it, in Florida, they did not send a nonviolent force. They didn't send the army right away. They used their true army of occupation, which is the police. Now, the Vietnamese did not say to the Americans, would you be subjected to a review board? Can we have a review board for your army of occupation? They had enough sense to understand that you have to have an above ground and you have to have a below ground. And when they fight you with elections, then you fight back with elections. But when they start shooting you, you've got to have your army to shoot back. And if you read the words of Jalil Montekim and Herman Bell, who is being subjected by the mayor of New York City to genocide because he has served his time twice. He's being subjected to torture because they want him to die in prison. When you read his words, they accept their role as prisoners of war. They are not just political prisoners. Why of the Panthers who are still in prison, prisoners of war? Because when we stood up in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, and we said we want our schools back, we pay taxes here. We don't just want to send our kids to these schools, and we don't care if they're integrated or not. But if this is our school, we want to control the budget. We want to control the jobs. We want to control the curriculum. We want to control what you put inside our children's minds and inside their hearts. They knew that was an act of war. They knew you were saying you will not make the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth generation a generation of slaves. And that is why they brought out the army in Ocean Hill, Brownsville. That is why they surrounded a school where I had volunteered as a teacher with armed people in the uniforms of the police. And we had a citizens civilian review board. It did us no good. Okay, what saved us was the Panthers who came and stood in front of the school with the parents and the teachers and the children. What saved us was Youth Against War and Fascism, who came and fought the cops for us. This skinny little white girl, she didn't weigh as much as Lisa, tiny little thing. The cop hit her and knocked her up in the air. What was she doing? She stood in front of me. Do you understand? She stood in front of me and she fought those cops. The point I'm making with you is the minute you take any institution in this country that empowers the people to look at that false reality that Glenn Ford told you about, they are going to shoot you, kill you, lock you up. And not all of us are warriors. Not all of us know how to shoot straight and aim for what we shoot at. But we have to listen to the words of our ancestors. Queen Mother Moore told you, you don't fight for the same territory twice. The people like Fannie Lou Hamer fought for this territory. The people who were lynched by the hundreds fought for this territory. You cannot give it up. When the chairman talks to you about the difference between opportunism and revolutionary acts, what he is talking about is no to charter schools, yes to public schools, and the action is run for the PTA. Every skill that you need to become like the barons you learn when you control your schools. I listen to mothers all the time talk about what these people are doing to their children when they send them to these white schools or they send them into the black bourgeoisie. Well, what are you surprised about? We stood up and we fought, and the Panthers defended us. So then it comes to the Albany legislature in New York City. Thank you. And the Democratic Party, instead of giving us community control, gave us decentralization. It's like the Israelis telling the Palestinians, go to the camps, go to the reservations, because what decentralization meant was they took these black people who thought the civil rights movement was so they could get a job and wear their suits and look like that boy that we just saw that the brother Devin showed us on that video, and cut deals behind our backs, sold out our budgets, didn't give computers in our children's classroom, didn't even educate them to an 8th grade level. Along comes Nixon, and I'm fast forwarding because I have a little bit of time. And they wanted to cater to the Southern Dixiecrats, as in Democratic Party. And they came up with this strategy. Let's just give them the niggers. Let's just accuse them of drug crimes. Along comes the black misleadership class that Glenn Ford told you about and asked for different legislation for crack cocaine offenses. And that was the beginning of the mass incarceration. So you put the two together. You get a school system that is run by these Negroes, and they don't even educate our children to an 8th grade reading level, and then people begin to say, oh, the public schools don't work. And the next thing you know, every kid who they think is going to take crack is in jail. But what else can they do? Because they cannot read, they can't count, some of them can't sign their names. And we know if they do make it into college, they need remediation because they have not been educated, because cats don't educate mice, they eat them. They eat their soul. They target our black boys, they push them into special ed, and if they're not animals before they get there in the 3rd grade, by the time they get out in the 8th grade or drop out, because the largest dropout rate for our boys is between 8th and 10th grade. Most of them don't make it to the high schools. And that's where the prison system touches us the most. 3% of our male force is missing. I'm sorry, 39% is missing. Okay? You know what that means to our black girls? Do you know what that means to our families? That is the recipe for genocide. The Germans did everything legally. And just as we know Nixon started this legal thing of incarceration, the brother who gave you his story, who came here and said all I wanted to do was to appropriate funds from those who had it and took it from us, and I went to jail for 10 years. That brother explained to you, where did he get his education? That he should have gotten outside, got it in jail. Well, the majority of our students who didn't graduate from high school, they graduated in jail. What does that tell you? They had the potential to learn. It was not being given to them. So there is collusion between the destruction of the public school system and the prison system. You call it the education to prison pipeline. It's not that. It's that goddamn train that Brother Yeshiteli was talking about, that train that passes through 24 hours. That's our diamonds. That's our goal. And you're giving them to the man. You got to fight for your schools, and then you got territory, and then you got a revolutionary army. Cut out, and I can't curse, I'm not Pan Africa, I can't do this. But cut out this business of stop the violence, making the kids give up their guns. I'm going to quote Brother Pointer. Sorry, I have to take this line from you. Just teach them who to shoot at. When you say give up your guns, you are guaranteeing that the rest of them are going to be shot down dead in the streets. They scared of those boys. And every time, and I think one of the brothers, Glenn Ford, mentioned it, seeing these cops after they shot somebody, how they were trembling and they were scared. The point I'm making to you is you have all of the information you need right now to start a revolution. And I'm going to conclude with this. And I hope you will bear with me. And I want to end with a revolutionary warrior who left us a message. Sorry. Just bear with me for 1 second while I pull it up. Oh. Okay, I've got the time. I'm not over yet, guys. Okay. No, I respect time. I respect organization. This is one of the most organized groups I've ever been in. And it starts off by saying, to some of us, today some of us depart from this city. Other warriors remain, and on Monday will be transformed back to lawyers, activists, activists, legal workers, students, and organizers. We leave here with quests to now be fulfilled on far-flung battlefields. I use these terms in the ancient and metaphoric sense, and I hope not to be offensive to anybody who's for peace. For we have formidable enemies, not unlike those in the tales of ancient days. There is a consummate evil that unleashes its dogs of war on the helpless, an enemy motivated only by an insatiable greed. The miller's daughter made to spin gold, the fisherman's wife, Midas, all with no thought of consequences. In this enemy, there is no love of the land or the creatures that live there, no compassion for the people. This enemy will destroy the air we breathe and the water we drink as long as the dollars keep filling up their money boxes. We now resume our everyday lives, but we have been charged once again with and for our quests. Like David going forth to meet Goliath, like Queen Zenobia who made war on the Romans, and modern heroes. Dare I mention Ho Chi Minh, Mao Zedong, Lenin, Fidel, Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela, John Brown, Che Guevara, who reminds us at the risk of seeming ridiculous, let me say that the true revolutionary is guided by a great feeling of love. Our quests, like theirs, are to shake the very foundations of the continents. We go out to stop police brutality, to rescue the imprisoned, to change the rules for those who have never, ever been able to get to the starting line, much less run the race, because of color, physical condition, gender, mental impairment. We go forth to preserve the air and the land and the water and the sky and all the beasts that crawl and fly. We go forth to safeguard the right to speak and to write, to join, to learn, to rest safe at home, to be secure, fed, healthy, sheltered, loved, and loving, to be at peace with one's identity. Until we meet again, our quests are formidable. We have in Washington poisonous government that spreads its venom to the body politic in all corners of the globe. We have war, big wars. But what I say to you, as Sister Lynn said to you, your quest is to organize, organize, organize. Your quest is to remember what the chairman said. What is revolutionary action? Some of you want to go for the big fight. That's the Senate. But I'm reminding you that you must be like the Cree Nation. You must plan for the salvation of the 7th generation. You must rescue the public school system, because your ancestors who freed themselves, they were their own liberators. Sister Lisa was giving the history of all the slave uprisings, the black soldiers who joined the war and championed Harriet Tubman. They were the balance that made the Civil War a success. You must know the first black construction Congress, they voted for public education. That is their legacy. There is a whole legacy of law behind public education that guarantees your rights to control the schools. The majority of the charter schools are in black communities. There's a reason for that, because they're controlled by the corporations. Do you understand? So you cannot give up the legacy that the former captives fought for you. You have to fight for public education. And when you do, the warriors will come out again and defend us like they did me. And when they do that, then you must get your political prisoners out. That's the difference. Anytime we stand up for our rights, they send the army of occupation. That's the police. And our job is to protect those who protect us and to protect those who are coming to guarantee that we'll all be free.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back. Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is
Black
back.
is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Back.
And the rallying call is Black is back.